Okay, our next inductee is from the class of 1989, football and wrestling. Mike Kane distinguished himself in football, Bay State Conference All-Second Team Offensive Guard. Named to the Natick Bulletin's Natick Football All-Decade Team from 1982 to 1992 as First Team Offensive Guard. Wrestling, though, is what made him a Hall of Famer. He wrestled at 171 pounds. His junior year, finished third in Division I Central Section Championships. Senior year, captain of the wrestling team, undefeated at 15 wins, no losses in dual meets. Won Division I Central Sectional Championship. Became Natick High School's first ever wrestling state champion at 171 pounds. Finished fifth at the New England Wrestling Championships. Wrestling Awards. Outstanding Wrestler Award at the Division I Central Sectional Championships. Montgomery Memorial Award as Natick High School's most dedicated athlete. Named to the Middlesex News Wrestler of the Year. Named to the Boston Globe and Boston Herald All-Scholastic Wrestling Teams. Member of the 1989 Massachusetts Junior National Wrestling Team. 2013 Natick High School Athletic Hall of Fame inductee. Ladies and gentlemen, also the first ever wrestling state champion from the class of 1989, Mike Kane.
Mike Kane from the class of 1989 was a two-sport athlete playing football and wrestling. In football, he was a Bay State Conference All-Second Team Offensive Guard and was named to the Natick Bulletin's Natick Football All-Decade Team from 1982 to 1992 as a first-team offensive guard. But it was wrestling that Mike Kane shined. In his junior year, he wrestled to a third-place finish at 171 pounds in the Division I Central Section Championships. In his senior year, while serving as captain and again wrestling at 171 pounds, Mike Kane was undefeated at 15-0 in dual meets. He won the Division I Central Sectional Championship and then won the Division I State Championship, becoming the first Natick High School wrestler in history to claim the title of state champion. He continued on and placed fifth in the New England Wrestling Championships. Mike Kane was presented with the Outstanding Wrestler Award at the Division I Central Sectional Championships, the Montgomery Memorial Award as Natick High School's most dedicated athlete, and named the Middlesex News Wrestler of the Year. He was also named to the Boston Globe and Boston Herald All-Scholastic Wrestling Teams and was a member of the 1989 Massachusetts Junior National Wrestling Team. 2013 Natick High School Athletic Hall of Fame inductee and first ever wrestling state champion from the class of 1989, Mike Kane.
So you get one chance to say thank you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do tonight. I'm not going to miss this opportunity. First of all, I'd like to thank the selection committee. It's really an incredible feeling, I think we can all agree, when you're humbled in life. It doesn't happen all the time, and it's happening right now. So thank you very much. This is an unbelievable honor. I'd like to congratulate all of the inductees tonight. The thing about a night like tonight that this Hall of Fame represents is that it documents our history as a town and as a community. And the inductees tonight are part of the permanent record. So is everybody here tonight. So congratulations to all of the inductees. I'd like to say thank you to my wife, Lane. Like so many of us in here tonight, the greatest part of our life is our marriage and our family. And the greatest part of my life is my marriage. My wife and I met 20 years ago today, and are thankful every single day that we've got what we've got, and are tremendously thankful for it. Just quick, my wife was a standout athlete herself in high school. Not that I was, but she was. A three-sport athlete at Hopkinton High, and so we have a lot in common in this respect. I want to say thank you to my two brothers who are here tonight, Sean and Tad Kane, the middle of three boys, two of the greatest guys you could ever hope for to have as brothers. We've been together for 40-some-odd years and get closer every single year, inseparable, to be totally honest with you. And the fact that they're here tonight is, it means the world to me, as I'm sure all of you can understand. And I want to say thank you to my parents who are not here tonight. They weren't able to make it. But just a quick story about my mother. My senior year, and you remember this, my senior year at the wrestling banquet, all the guys are in shirts and ties. They're giving out awards. And so the coaches start reading off the accolades for an award, and it's for my mother. She got an award that year. She got a trophy for Natick High School Wrestling's Best Fan, 1989. And I don't know how many guys out here go to their varsity senior year banquet and their mom is getting an award along with them. And that's what happened to me. And, you know, I wrestled 50 matches my senior year, and my mother was at every single one of them. And the one thing she used to do is she would pack this huge canvas bag of food. Wrestlers love to eat, especially after they weigh in. And she used to feed our team every single match, every single tournament, every single week through that whole season. And she was a tremendous part, still is, of the success that I had in this sport. So just quick, one of the things that's interesting, when you're a kid, and I was a kid in the 80s, you think that, at least I thought when I was a kid, that the 1980s, that was the only decade that sports existed in Natick. There was nobody before and didn't really understand anything coming after. But I turned 10 in 1981. And I joined Pop Warner Football, the D team, and I played Little League Baseball. The Celtics won the World Championship. They beat the Rockets. And so, you know, I'm 12 years old, and Natick beats Melrose 35-34 in the Super Bowl. And guys like Paul Galani and, you know, Chanel Pathea and Glenn Chavis and Jimmy Kelly and, you know, Darren Flutie. You know, when you're an 11-year-old kid and you're looking up at those guys, they were like pro athletes to a little kid. 1983, they win the Super Bowl again. They beat Peabody 28-14. And I don't know if it was this particular year. I think it was 1983. I remember watching that Natick Legion baseball team, which as a little kid, you've got Alvin Taylor at shortstop. You got Darren Flutie at second base. You got Donnie Hutchinson with his 10-gallon baseball glove in center field. Paul Galani pitching. Jimmy DiPaolo catching. And John Brown, who was like the Albert Pujols of Natick at that time, was just, you know, just hammering the ball. 1984, Natick football goes 10-0, and as a little kid, you are just beside yourself. They don't go to the Super Bowl, but a plane flies over the football stadium that day, if I'm not correct, that says, you're not number one until you beat Natick. 1985, Natick's back in the Super Bowl. It's my freshman year in high school, and in one of the greatest football games I've ever seen. Natick played Brockton, and I'll never, you know, just a quick story. I remember being at that game, looking down on the field, and it's like, man, Brockton looked like a much physically bigger team than Natick that night, that day, you know? And about 10 minutes before the game, and Mr. Lamb, I don't know if you remember this, but all of a sudden, the entire offensive and defensive line of Natick walked out, led by Al Pogarian, Joe Asenko, all those guys. And all of a sudden, it was on. That was an unbelievable football game. But my life changed in 1986 when I was a sophomore in high school. Two things happened. I hooked up with the guys in my class for some unbelievable football experiences, and I joined the wrestling team for the first time. I came out as a sophomore, and I met Coach Bob Annabali. But I wanna say thank you so much. Yeah, I want to say thank you to the guys that I played football with. They were my friends. They were some of the fiercest competitors I've ever met in my entire life. So many of them went on to distinguish themselves in college. John Webb was one of our captains, Bobby Spadano, Chris Yancey, Ross Eberhardt, who ended up playing college up in Union, New York, Nick Cirillo, John McGregor, one of my best friends, who led the Bay State League in touchdown catches that year. Tony Ryan, who rushed for 1,100 yards that year, only the third Natick football player to do that, along with Coach Whalen and Darren Flutie after 1970. Joe Lamb, Coach Lamb's son, who, leading our offense that year, led Division I in touchdown passes. 13 of them were to John McGregor. The rest of them were to one of my best friends, Paul Piccioli, who is sitting over here tonight, who went on to Bridgewater State and absolutely distinguished himself there. Won 2 New England Football Conference championships, still holds 3 school records at Bridgewater State, and is a dear friend of mine. And then this last guy, Scott Asenko, who I can't believe I'm seeing tonight. I can't explain how happy I am. I haven't seen Scott in a long time, one of my best friends in high school. And in the 18 years that I grew up in Natick, in all the sports that I played, nobody, there was nobody like Scott Asenko to play with. He was one of the fiercest, most talented, most unbelievable guys to play football with. He went on to play at UMass, captained their team, won the Yankee Conference, is top 10 all-time sacks up at UMass, and he drove up here tonight. We've been having a blast, and he's typical of the guys that I played with, who I'm so thankful for. We had an unbelievable experience. And you know, the great thing about that football, our senior year, the fall of 1988, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Lamb, but that year, Mr. Lamb's son, Joel, was our starting quarterback. Mr. Kiley's son, Ed, was our starting center. And Stephen Glani, who is here tonight, was a sophomore on the varsity football team. I think it might have been the only year that the coaches had all their sons together. And it was a special year for us. It really was. We had things rolling to a great extent. So thank you to the guys that I played football with. A wonderful group of guys, a wonderful group of coaches. Mr. May, Mr. Lamb, Mr. Galani, Mr. Lakature, who coached our sophomore team to a 10-0 record, Mr. Von Yu, Donnie Olson, wonderful coaching staff. And the football season ended, and then boom, it was right into my senior year of wrestling. And when you wrestle for Coach Bob Annabali, it is on. It is flat out on. And if you've been around Natick, the reputation in Natick wrestling speaks for itself. But I had a wonderful, amazing group of teammates that year. I accomplished very little on my own in sports. I accomplished everything with the help of some tremendous coaches and some tremendous athletes that I played with. Timmy Corliss was a co-captain. Paul Piccioli, who I mentioned earlier, was on that team. Scott Peoples, Terry Roush, Todd Kincaid, Phil Brown, who was here tonight, absolutely standout wrestler, Colin Tobin. The list is endless. We did a lot of great things as a wrestling team that year together. We beat Wellesley for the first time in school history, which was fantastic. And I didn't realize it at the time, but Bobby Annabali was probably 20 years old. He was 19 when I came out as a sophomore, 20, 21 as a senior. But he's a special human being. And so the last thank you I want to give tonight, or one of the last thank yous I want to give tonight, is to Coach Bob Annabali. Now, I could absolutely. I could go through a laundry list of accolades and this and that, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say one thing. And I could say a lot of things, but I'm just going to pick this one. I came out as a sophomore for wrestling. I was 15, and I'd never been involved in the sport before. And it was as intense gets. And I never realized I liked it that way, and Annabali liked it that way. But what I sensed pretty much immediately on some level as a 15-year-old kid was his loyalty to us, to his wrestlers. And when you're 15 and that hits home, you start running through brick walls, and you start overachieving, and you start accomplishing things that you didn't think you could, that you didn't dream you could. And that's the effect that he had on me. And over 28 seasons and 500, 600, 700 wrestlers later, and his loyalty to every single one of them, he gets young men to overachieve. He inspires them, he motivates them, and at the end of the day, he is there with a huge smile in his arm around you. He is one of the classiest, most honest, most loyal individuals I've ever met. He is a tremendous part of why I'm here tonight. And when I think of Natick wrestling and I think of Bob Annabali, I think of being part of a family that I've been a part of for a long time. And so, Bob Annabali, you are the man. Thank you very much. And I can't wait till he's up here himself. So I'm gonna step off right now, but the last thank you tonight I want to give is to the town of Natick. Thank you to the town of Natick. Thank you for allowing me to grow up and graduate with so many incredible athletes and so many incredible friends, with 2 incredible brothers in an incredible community. Thank you for thrilling me as a little kid with the likes of Jimmy DiPaolo, Darren Flutie, Paul Galani, Joel Crisafulli, Al Pogarian, Mark Bianchi, Jimmy Kelly, Chanel Pathea, Glenn Shavis, Dickie Adams, Donnie Hutchinson. It goes on and on and on for me when I was a kid in that decade, the 1980s, which was all I knew at that time. Tonight has truly broadened my horizons. Thank you for some of the greatest athletic coaches in the state of Massachusetts. Mr. Tom Lamb, Mr. Bob Annaboli, classic examples of that. Thank you for a wonderful childhood, for the best memories a kid could ever hope for, because when you think about the possessions that you have, oftentimes our memories are the most valuable, and that is my case when it comes to the town of Natick. Because in the end, this has very little to do with me and everything to do with us, with Natick, with our shared past, with our shared moment right now on the nick of time in this present moment, and our shared hopes for the future. So thank you very much. This is a tremendous honor.
That was a great speech. Great speech.